When configuring the storage area networking in UCS, we might want to jump right into configuring the uplinks, right? That might be our temptation. But really, the first thing we need to do is to configure the virtual storage area networks, or VSANs, within the UCS environment. Here we are on the SAN tab of UCS Manager, and we can expand the SAN cloud and take a look at the fact that we already have a VSAN configured. That would be the default VSAN, VSAN 1. That comes pre-enabled on UCS Manager. So and that's great, but typically we don't want to use the default VSAN. Just like for security reasons, we don't want to use the default VLAN. It makes it easy for man-in-the-middle attacks and such. We'd want to avoid that within the storage area network as well. And so we're going to right-click on VSANs and say Create a VSAN. And we're going to create a name for this, so we'll just call this VSAN 10. We don't really need a complicated name. We can stick with something that's pretty appropriate. And even though we can configure it on both fabrics at the same time, just like with VLANs, we want to pick one of these. So it's very highly recommended that we don't have VSAN 10, for example, on both Fabric A and Fabric B, because it's kind of a safety net. If, for example, we were to accidentally connect our two fabrics, so we have Fabric A switch and Fabric B switch, and somebody accidentally connects these, and let's say we're running VSAN 10 on the left and VSAN 10 on the right. Well, that's going to merge these fabrics, and that's a really bad situation. However, if we have VSAN 20 on the right, so maybe VSAN 10 on the left, VSAN 20 on the right, that actually prevents any fabric mergers because VSAN 10 and VSAN 20 are distinct fabrics. So it's highly recommended that we don't actually configure the same VSAN ID on both fabrics. So we'll create VSAN 10 on Fabric A. Okay, so we'll make that VSAN 10 and Fabric A. And what is this FCOE VLAN? Well, FCOE is enabled within UCS by default. So when we have the fabric interconnects and they're tied downstream to a server, this is running FCOE. And so if we're to extend VSAN 10 down a fiber channel over Ethernet meaning that we're actually running VLANs, well, a VSAN has to be mapped to a VLAN. And this has to be unique in the environment. So we usually want to pick a high number. So VSAN 10, maybe we can map that to VLAN 1010 or 4010 or something along those lines. Just something that's so high and out there that hopefully we're not going to use that in our environment. That would be bad. So, and again, we'll call this 4010, and that's our configuration. We hit OK, and that VSAN is created. Now if we go to Fabric A and expand the VSANs that are in Fabric A, we do see that VSAN 10 has been configured. Now with Fabric B, again, we expand the VSANs, it's not there because we didn't create VSAN 10 on Fabric B. So let's go ahead and create a VSAN here, and we'll call this VSAN 20, and Fabric B 20, and again, something high, we'll go with the same naming scheme, we'll call it 4020. By the way, one thing to note in this, we have the option to enable fiber channel zoning. And if our fabric interconnect is tied upstream to some kind of fiber channel switch, we do not want to enable zoning. In fact, it says right there, do not enable zoning if the fabric interconnect is connected upstream, because the zoning config will actually be pushed down to the fabric interconnect. Now, if we don't have an upstream fiber channel switch, if we're hanging storage directly off of this fabric interconnect, then we would want to enable fiber channel zoning. So that just depends on the environment in which we're deploying this configuration. So we hit OK, and now our VSANs have been configured. And that's it. We've created VSANs in Fabric A and Fabric B, and we have tied those to FCOE VLANs. We have decided whether or not to enable zoning, and from there we can go to our uplink configurations. When creating VSANs, we want to make sure that we use different VSAN IDs for the two different fabrics. We also have to map each VSAN ID to an FCOE VLAN, because even if we're not using FCOE in our environment, UCS uses FCOE southbound of the fabric interconnects. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.